Hi, very good morning. I'm Dr. Janak Patel, MD, general physician. I'm not a cardiologist. Whatever topic I'm going to discuss today, good number of material I've gathered from YouTube's, some of the video lectures, some of the CME papers, etc. And this is a very rare conditions. Ideally, we should say very common conditions, but rarely we recognize them because we always misinterpret and we misdiagnose those conditions and we don't pay attention to them. So we are going to discuss today regarding one of the word which is very commonly utilized, gastrocardiac syndrome, or it was also called gastric cardiac connections or Rome-Held syndrome. So gastrocardiac syndrome or Rome-Held syndrome, or also called RS. There is one good terminology given by one of the doctor, that is by Dr. Sanjay Gupta. He is a cardiologist in York City, America, USA. He has given a name vagal atrial fibrillation. Yes, atrial fibrillation is secondary due to vagal nerve. There is also another term called as a gastric cardia syndrome. And full name of Rome-Held syndrome is Rome-Held Tecklenburg-Cecconi syndrome. Now what exactly it is this? Where heart is absolutely normal. There is no valvular heart disease, though there is no ischemic heart disease, there is no enlargement of left atrium, means there is no structural heart disease, no ischemic heart disease, no COPD, etc. But secondary due to some stomach disorder, esophagus or stomach disorder, you end up with a cardiac arrhythmias. The most common disease of stomach and esophagus, that is GERD, and person will end up with atrial fibrillation. And the name given by Dr. Sanjay Gupta is vagal atrial fibrillation. We'll be discussing this topic under different headings. What exactly is gastrocardiac syndrome? Meaning is very simple. Person is having a gastric disorder, means involvement of the stomach and esophagus, where heart is absolutely normal, no structural heart disease, no ischemic heart disease, no valvular heart disease, there is no involvement of left atrium, there is no left atrial enlargement, there is no even respiratory disorders, means there are no other causes of atrial flutter fibrillation, and secondary due to disorders of stomach and lower end of esophagus. Person develops certain symptoms like palpitation, or person gets fatigue, shortness of breath, dizziness, chest pain, or occasionally person may be absolutely asymptomatic and on ECG record you get atrial fibrillation. This type of presentation where heart is absolutely normal and still person gets all these symptoms which are due to cardiac arrhythmia, and one of the cardiac arrhythmia is atrial fibrillation. That is fatigue, shortness of breath, dizziness, light headache, palpitation, chest pain, and occasionally person can be asymptomatic, is labeled as gastrocardiac syndrome. Now by and large we always classify atrial fibrillation depending upon the presentation: paroxysmal, persistent, permanent, or lone atrial fibrillation. We know the meaning of paroxysmal very well, we'll be discussing in the next slide. But low atrial fibrillation is very clear that atrial fibrillation is after the age of 60, where heart is absolutely normal. There is no structural heart disease, no hypertension, no respiratory disorders like COPD, etc. No thyrotoxicosis. In all those conditions, if you get an atrial fibrillation, it is called lone atrial fibrillation. So Dr. Sanjay Gupta has given a very nice term, type 1 and type 2. Usually type 2 is with all those cardiac disorders like congestive heart failure, ischemic heart disease, cardiomyopathy, hypertension, COPD, etc. That is where you have gotten clear-cut evidence for atrial fibrillation. That is type 2. And they usually can present as any one of these group, paroxysmal, persistent, or permanent. While type 1, by and large, it will be falling into this particular variety we call as a lone atrial fibrillation, or usually there are paroxysmal episodes. So we know very well paroxysmal episodes are intermittent, where person will develop atrial fibrillation, will stop on its own, and by the time he comes to you, good number of time, when you record an ECG, it may be absolutely normal rhythm. And that's the reason why this particular condition is missed good number of time. Because this atrial fibrillation may last for few seconds to a minutes or hours, and maybe lasting for few days. Hence, good number of time this is being missed. While persistent atrial fibrillation, very frequently in a type 2 variety, you can divide into two groups. Short lasting persistent, where it lasts for less than 1 year. And if it is lasting more than 1 year, it is called long standing persistent. And after treatment, if atrial fibrillation still persists with medications, cardioversion, etc., and it does not revert back to normal sinus rhythm, then we call that as a permanent. Now, as far as a gastrocardiac condition is concerned, the etiology has to be in GI tract. Most common etiology is GERD, where person gets dyspepsia, reflux-like dyspepsia, etc. Or you might have hiatus hernia. And this conditions results into atrial flutter fibrillation, mainly atrial fibrillation or flutter, or even you can have a premature beats, atrial premature beat, ventricular premature beats. But when it ends up into atrial fibrillation, it is labeled as vagal atrial fibrillation or Rome-Held syndrome, or short form it is called RS, or gastrocardiac syndrome. Also, you can put them into type 1. Later on, you can have some other type of terminology. And we know very well the commonest cause of GERD is because of hot spicy food, alcohol, smoking, excessive tea, coffee, obesity, spicy, oily, fried foods, etc. Also, there is one factor which can be, there can be family history. If a person is having a strong family history of atrial fibrillation, hypertension, he is hypertensive, he is obese, he is smoker, he is diabetic, he is having ischemic heart disease, valvular heart disease, etc. It will fall into type 2 variety. So in type 2, the commonest cause, or we call with structural heart disease, you can have COPD, severe congestive heart failure, valvular heart disease like MS-MR, coronary artery disease, digitalis toxicity, MI, pericarditis, post-CABG, rheumatic mitral valvular disease, thyrotoxicosis, alcohol, atrial myxoma, pulmonary embolism, pheochromocytoma, hypertension, etc. There will be a good number of lists. All these can end up, and we usually label them as type 2. But all this can be easily recognized and you can put the diagnosis. But if heart is absolutely normal, where all these conditions are ruled out. So after ruling out all these conditions, and if a person is developing atrial fibrillation due to gastric conditions, and by treating gastric conditions, if atrial fibrillation is reduced or you get relief, it is usually put as a gastrocardiac syndrome. As far as secondary group is concerned, or we call type 2 is concerned, some of the risk factors like age, hypertension, diabetes, coronary artery disease, cardiomyopathy, structural or valvular heart disease, untreated atrial flutter, COPD, sleep apnea, obesity, alcohol, sepsis, etc. All these can be predisposing factors. Now, how you can understand this? So, some of the pathophysiology will increase the vagal tone by stimulating the vagus nerve. And whenever the vagal tone is increased, parasympathetic activity increases. It will reduce your heart rate. So, person will have a bradycardia. Whenever there is a bradycardia, parasympathetic activity over the heart is reduced, and now sympathetic will have a little overload or will overcome, and it can precipitate cardiac arrhythmias like atrial premature beats, ventricular premature beats, and sometimes even atrial fibrillation. It has been well observed and it has been seen good number of times whenever a person has got a full stomach, he has a bloated up stomach. During that particular time, there was a chance of getting cardiac arrhythmias. Probably because of overstretching of the stomach, the vagus nerve is stimulated. And whenever there is a relief of this bloating sensation, the incidence of cardiac arrhythmia was relatively less. Also, in presence of a hiatus hernia, whenever the stomach is full, this hiatus hernia could compress left atrium and can stimulate atrial fibrillation. Same way, because of a excessive food or full stomach or heavy meal, diaphragm is lifted up and it could stimulate left atrium and can result into atrial flutter fibrillation. In case of GERD and esophagitis, there is an irritation and inflammation of lower end of esophagus, and that inflammation can also stimulate the left atrium, which is in very close contact with lower end of esophagus, and can stimulate atrial fibrillation. It was also observed in some of the paper that when the person acquires a left side position, means left lateral position, when he sleeps in a left lateral position, the incidence of atrial fibrillation was relatively more. In some, it was also observed with a right lateral position, but person used to feel better in central position, central supine position. So, by change in the position also, there was little change in the episodes of atrial fibrillation. Whenever a person was treated with proton pump inhibitor, as soon as the inflammation is reduced, the incidence was reduced. But at the same time, it was observed that whenever a person is given proton pump inhibitor for a long period, they used to develop a deficiency of certain minerals like iron and magnesium. And this person were more prone to atrial fibrillation. And if anemia is corrected and magnesium is replaced, the episodes of atrial fibrillation was reduced. So by replacing magnesium, atrial fibrillation was reduced. And if a person gets a good sleep, incidence was less. Yes, whenever there is a bradycardia because of excessive vagal tone. Now, if a person does exercise, because of exercise, you are increasing your sympathetic tone. It will help to reduce gastrocardiac symptoms. Even if you change little bit your lifestyle, diets, if you avoid certain materials which increases the GERD, the incidence was reduced, as well as when the person was taking a small meal which reduces the bloating sensation, distension of stomach, that used to reduce the incidence of atrial fibrillation. Tea, coffee, chocolates, excessive used to increase GERD, reflux esophagitis, and there was increased incidence of atrial flutter fibrillation. So all these factors, even Coke, because it is basically containing carbonic acid, and that used to increase the incidence of atrial fibrillation. Even obesity, obstructive sleep apnea, etc. Even when the person takes a very nice rest, incidence was reduced. Now it is a very clear cut that atrial fibrillation, if it persists for a longer period, it can cause atrial fibrosis, dilatation, and more incidence of atrial fibrillation. By and large, this is missed because this is a paroxysmal episodes. So by the time person comes to you, he may not have atrial fibrillation at that time, and your record will be normal, and you will take it for granted that it is normal. And good number of time that is missed. So a person who comes to you with a palpitations, and if you pick up during that particular episode, you may be able to pick up atrial fibrillation, and then when you investigate, you will be able to pick up gastrocardiac syndrome. So the person will present with two groups of symptoms. Because of atrial fibrillation, he will come to you with palpitations, and that palpitation may be, person may be complaining of irregular thumping feeling, pounding feeling, etc. Chest discomfort. He might say that my heart is racing because of tachycardia, light headache, fainting episodes, easy fatigue, shortness of breath, weakness. Occasionally person may be completely asymptomatic. But along with this, if a person is having episodes of GERD, reflux symptoms like burning sensation, chest pain, difficulty in swallowing, dry cough, sore throat, nausea, vomiting, heartburns, regurgitations, etc. Means you got a GERD symptoms, as well as person is having a symptoms which are not fitting with GERD, like shortness of breath, fatigue, dizziness, light headache, palpitation, chest pain, because chest pain is also here, but this is a typical chest pain like anginal chest pain. You must suspect one of the group. It can be, that is gastrocardiac syndrome. So good number of time, any person who comes to with a palpitation, dyspnea, dizziness, easy fatigue, syncopal episodes or fainting episodes, and anginal pain along with GERD symptoms. Do keep it in mind. Now, there is a little clinical difference between gastrocardiac syndrome, or we call vagal atrial fibrillation, and atrial fibrillation because of type 2 variety. We call type 1 and type 2 variety. Vagal atrial fibrillation is very common in younger age group, while this will be common in an older age group. Male are more prone as compared to female. Here, there is nothing specific. After investigating with X-ray chest, echo, etc., heart will be normal. While here, there will be some heart disease or even COPD, thyrotoxicosis, etc. Usually, before the atrial fibrillation, person will have a bradycardia. So there will be slow heart rate because of increased vagal tone, and may be preceded by atrial flutter, which will be followed by atrial fibrillation. And when a person recovers, it is also same way. When he recovers, he will slowly have atrial flutter and then bradycardia. While in case of type 2 variety, or what we call is the person who has got an heart disease, maybe ischemic, maybe valvular, maybe structural heart disease, cardiomyopathy, myocarditis, etc. The person will have a sudden episode of atrial fibrillation. It will not be atrial flutter followed by atrial fibrillation. And atrial fibrillation will end with bradycardia. While here, atrial flutter may become atrial fibrillation, but atrial fibrillation will not go into atrial flutter and go back to, say, bradycardia, but it will end with tachycardia. These are usually lone episodes, or we call paroxysmal episodes. Well, these can be persistent or permanent. Good number of time it is a persistent, maybe late persistent, or less than 1 year, or more than 1 year, or it can be permanent also. This group of people will be very frequently associated with stomach and esophagus, like GERD or hiatus hernia. While this is very common in old person with ischemic heart disease, with mitral stenosis or mitral regurgitation, diabetes mellitus, hypertension, etc. Thyrotoxicosis, or person may be alcohol addict, chronic alcoholism. Here there will be some genetic factor, probably some genetic factor is there, and there are triggers which increases GERD. So person who has got heavy meal, say NSAID, steroids, smoking, alcohol, and which increases the incidence of GERD, or there is an increase bloating sensation because of heavy meals, it can trigger off vagal atrial fibrillation. Total lifestyle changes by sleeping in a left lateral position, by taking small meals, the person is benefited. Proton pump inhibitor also gives a benefit, but when proton pump inhibitor is taken for a very long period, they usually develop invariably magnesium deficiency and iron deficiency. And in those particular group, by replacing magnesium and by correcting anemia, the person is benefited in vagal atrial fibrillation. Getting a good sleep, treating obstructive sleep apnea also gives a good results. So how you approach to this group of people? First is you have to suspect. In which person you suspect? If any person who is little younger comes with symptom signs of GERD or stomach disorders, and he is having associated with GERD symptoms suggestive of cardiac arrhythmias like palpitation, dizziness, shortness of breath, chest pain, etc. You have to do a preliminary investigations, and in that preliminary investigation you will have to investigate for stomach and esophagus, and you will have to investigate for cardiac. So for GERD, upper GI endoscopy, most important. You can confirm by doing pH manometry. You can do GERD study, pressure studies in lower end of esophagus, and you can also try to rule out hiatus hernia. And as far as the cardiac condition is concerned, ECG, X-ray chest and echo, standard 3. In this particular group of person, X-ray chest will be nearly normal, echocardiography will be normal, no structural heart disease, no COPD, and ECG may or may not show cardiac arrhythmia. But in the person who does not show cardiac arrhythmia, you can go for a long-term studies, and you should also rule out thyrotoxicosis. At the time of a symptom, if the person is not showing you anything in ECG because it is paroxysmal episode or low atrial fibrillation, you can go for Holter monitoring, or you can go for external loop recording or internal loop recording, and that can pick up. As far as management is concerned, you can have management divided into two groups. Main management, what we call is a lifestyle modification. So lifestyle change is very important. What you have to do is small meals, because that will decrease your distension of the stomach or bloating of the stomach, and patient is benefited. You have to avoid hot food, alcohol, smoking, excessive tea, coffee, chocolates, avoid spicy foods. All these factors will increase chance of GERD. Along with that, if a person is obese, reduce BMR by having a good weight control. Avoid NSAID and steroids, which can also increase the chance of GERD. If a person is having obstructive sleep apnea, treat obstructive sleep apnea, have a good sleep. Avoid anxiety, avoid mental stress, and you can put them on a proton pump inhibitor. Persons are benefited with all these parameters. But at the same time, by putting them on a proton pump inhibitor, little larger dose and for a little longer period, invariably they develop magnesium deficiency. And if you find a magnesium level is low, replace magnesium good number of time. This atrial fibrillation will reduce. Incidence of atrial fibrillation will reduce. Person is also benefited by sleeping pattern. Person, if he lies down on a left position and if he is getting increased incidence of palpitation, he should avoid that particular position, and person will be benefited. Base position is a straight supine position which is best, and person is benefited. There are some other things they do. Ginger capsule, which is showing you some benefits. Reducing the distension of abdomen by using good number of other material like simethicone, etc. And treatment of depression and anxiety is also beneficial. If you use probiotic and digestive enzymes, and if you change your eating habits, the person is benefited. And person should avoid certain dairy products and the food which is having high quantity of gluten. So all this can give a good benefit, and they are being benefited. So in a vagal atrial fibrillation, you should avoid beta blockers, CCB and digoxin, because this can worsen if it is gastrocardiac syndrome. We don't confirm that, and good number of time we put them on a digoxin or CCB or beta blockers, etc. for treatment of atrial fibrillation. And even sometimes we use even amiodarone. Amiodarone has got some benefit in case of a vagal atrial fibrillation, and another drug which is beneficial is flecainide. By and large, in vagal atrial fibrillation, they don't require ablation therapy. While it is a must, and good number of time it is the treatment which is required in a person with a permanent or we call long-term atrial fibrillation. So if you once put them into two big groups, if you divide into those two big groups, type 1 or type 2, type 1 is relatively safe, we can see that, and in that no beta blocker, no CCB, no digoxin, no ablation. By and large, you treat the GI condition, person is benefited. And in spite of that, if still person is having, you can use amiodarone or flecainide. While in case of a type 2 variety, usually you require what we call is either amiodarone, beta blocker, CCB, and if a person is having COPD or say valvular heart disease, digoxin may be beneficial. Very frequently they develop thromboembolism is quite common, which is relatively less common in person with what we call as a gastrocardiac syndrome. So in a person with structural heart disease and particularly left atrial enlargement, they've got a very high incidence of thromboembolism. So they require anticoagulants. And invariably they require ablation therapy. Invariably they require ablation therapy or sometimes occlusion devices or left atrial appendage ligation, etc. You will require treatment for all those things. So in a type 2 variety, usually you might require a rhythm control by either cardioversion or drugs or by surgery or by device implantation like pacemaker or closure of left atrium, etc. And rate control can be done by either drugs which blocks the AV node, and you might require a ablation therapy or you might require a pacemaker. Along with that, you require an anticoagulations. You may require medication to control the heart rate and rhythm. So we call rhythm control and rate control. And when it is not controlled by medications, you might require electric cardioversion or you might require a ablation therapy. So beta blocker, calcium channel blocker and digoxin are very frequently utilized for rate control, and that is one of the treatment in case of type 2, which is not beneficial in case of type 1 or we call as a vagal atrial fibrillation or we call gastrocardiac syndrome. On the top, it can result into complications because when you give this, when you give beta blocker, etc., it can precipitate further severe bradycardia. This is a chart, flow chart for type 2 variety we call symptomatic atrial fibrillation. How you do it, I'm not going into detail because we are talking about vagal variety. As far as complication is concerned, usually in a type 1, there are very rarely you undergo complications. Main complications, ideally we should not say complications, but person will have a psychological effect because every now and then he is getting those palpitations and he goes to a doctor, doctor examines, we misdiagnose and we say that you don't have anything, you go back. So it can give a psychological impact. And because he is getting the recurrent episodes, it can be even a financial problem also. So I thank you all for taking out time. I know that your time is valuable and I appreciate you for spending some of the time with me. And I think even I have seen some of the patient in everyday practice. I have missed those cases. After going through these particular episodes, this particular group of people, and after reading all this paper, etc., I think we should pay more attention to any person who comes to you with the GI symptoms. And along with GI symptoms, if the person who is having chronic GI disorders like GERD, reflux esophagitis, dyspepsia, etc. And if they are complaining of palpitation, we should pay attention and we should try to rule out this particular group. So I end my lecture here. I hope this lecture will be helpful and you may be able to pick up such cases in your everyday practice. See you next time.